So today we're going to talk about environmental justice. This is part of our designing solutions unit. Environmental justice really has to do with people, sort of with the social aspect of sustainable environmental problems. So if you don't know what environmental justice is, that's okay. We're going to talk about it in a few minutes. Today's warm-up, we didn't really have a warm-up. Instead, it was to finish Lesson 20 exit slip. So do make sure that you've done Lesson 20's exit slip. Some really quick announcements before we move forward. So first is this Thursday, or rather, that would be November 20th, is the last day of Marking Period 2. So that is the last day to submit all of your work from Marking Period 2, which started on October 9th. And at this point, I cannot grade work from before October 9th. So you should focus instead on work from after and including October 9th. So if I assign something before October 9th, you can do it. You should still do it when you have time, but I can't give you a grade for it. And your grade for Marking Period 1 is kind of set in stone. It's kind of permanent. So you should definitely focus instead on all your work from October 9th and beyond. The second announcement is that blank assignments will now get a 0. So if you submit a blank assignment, in the past, I would say, hey, this is a blank assignment, please revise and resubmit it. And I would give it back to you. And then, but I'm finding that some students will almost play like a blank assignment tag with me where I'll say, hey, you submitted a blank assignment, return it to them, and they'll immediately send me back the exact same blank assignment. And I know it's because they want to show their parents or guardians that they don't have any missing work. I get that. So I'm just going to save us both the trouble, and I'm just going to give you a 0 when you submit a blank assignment. That way it will not say missing, and that way I don't have to keep looking at blank assignments if you're not going to do them. Now, I'm not doing this to punish you. I'm just trying to save myself some work and also you some work, I guess. So if you see that you got a 0 on assignment, please do not freak out. All it means is that you didn't actually do it. So you can still, you guys know in my class, you can always go back and redo any assignments and I will regrade them. Yeah, so if you have a 0 on assignment, that just means you have to do it and resubmit it, and then I'll give you a grade. But I don't want to play this tag anymore. If you have any questions about that, please let me know. I'm happy to explain myself. The third thing is far more fun. The third thing is the attendance incentive. So if you are in 8th grade and if you attend every class each week, on Fridays you will be invited to play Among Us with your teachers. So I played Among Us with some of my students last week. It was super fun. And so do make sure that you're going to all of your classes and make sure to remind your teachers to update their attendance. That way we know to invite you. But it's been super fun. Would love to have you. So please come to all your classes so you can play with me. All right. We can skip this. Cool. So our agenda for today, we just did the warm-up. Next, we're going to introduce environmental justice. Then we're going to examine environmental justice case studies. And lastly, we'll do our exit slip. The learning target for today is I can explain how environmental problems affect some people more than others. So, environmental justice. Environmental justice is very similar to social justice. And in class, I asked, what is social justice? A lot of people said giving the same rights to everyone. And I think that's a good definition of social justice. Social justice is when everyone has the same rights. And the second question I asked is, what are some ways that people are different? So what different identities could people have? And so people said things like race, culture, nationality, so like where you're born or what country you're a citizen of. Could be income, could be gender, sexuality, could be your location. I'm definitely missing a few, but I forget. Anyway, so those are all different ways so these are the things that make us different. But of course, when we say social justice, we mean that everyone has the same rights, regardless of all of these things that make us different. So regardless of your race or nationality or language or culture or ethnicity, gender, sexuality, location, income, we should have the same rights. So environmental justice is basically the same thing as social justice, just that. Environmental justice is the fair access to a safe and clean environment for all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income. That definition right there is from the Environmental Protection Agency, which is a federal agency. It's run by the president, or rather it's run by someone right underneath the president of the United States. And to this definition, I would add things like gender and sexuality and location. But this is a good start of a definition. So environmental justice is just giving everyone a safe and clean environment. So I have a short video that's going to explain environmental justice a little bit. As you watch this video, I want you to pay attention to the different ways that environmental problems can affect different people in different ways. All right, so in that video, you heard some different ways that environmental problems can affect different people in different ways. No, not again. Okay, so I wanted to talk about a phenomenon in environmental justice, and that is not in my backyard. And this is a phrase, this is something people say. And the short way that we write it is NIMBY. But a number of environmental injustices occur because of NIMBY. So basically, people who have a lot of money or political power can influence where an environmental problem happens or whether it gets solved, simply by saying, "not in my backyard." It's something they actually say, or it's an idea that they express. So let's think about power plants as an example. So all cities need electricity, and so they need to put power plants somewhere. So cities might ask, where should we put power plants? And rich people or people with a lot of political power might say something like, "not in my backyard." And so if these rich people or people with a lot of political power, they have the time, the money, the resources to raise awareness of the power plant issue in their neighborhoods, and they pressure cities or states to not put these power plants in these rich neighborhoods, or even sometimes these white neighborhoods, then where is the city or the state going to put them? You probably guessed it. The city or the state is going to put the power plants in places where people aren't going to raise they're not going to put up as much of a fight, either because they don't have the money to do so, or the time, or the resources. And so power plants are going to end up in places where low-income people live. So because people who have the most political power did not want power plants in the neighborhoods, cities and states put the power plants usually in low-income neighborhoods or Black neighborhoods because of systemic racism, which is just racism that is present in a lot of different systems in society. Anyway, so systemic racism, that's something much bigger that I wasn't going to get into here. But I have an example to show you. So you guys know I'm from Detroit. Nope, I'm not from Detroit. I'm from Michigan. And there's an example that I wanted to show you from Detroit. This example is called a renewable power plant. But there's nothing really renewable about it. It's actually a trash incinerator. So all this power plant does is it takes trash from the city of Detroit, burns it, and gets some electricity from it, from all the heat. And the city of Detroit put this trash burning power plant right in the middle of the city of Detroit. Why would they do that? Detroit is it's heavily populated. There are like 1 million people that live right in here, or there were. Now there are not so many, but there were 1 million people that lived here. And why would you put this power plant right in the middle of a heavily populated area? Well, the colors on this map might tell you all you need to know. So all these red places are areas of low income. So the deep red, those are people that make on average, between $0 and $28,000 a year. That is very little money to live on. And so this trash incinerator is smack dab in the middle of low-income neighborhoods, of a low-income city. Now, the viewer, are intelligent. I am intelligent. We both know you should put a trash incinerator, which produces a ton of air pollution, somewhere where there aren't that many people. Well, the places where there aren't that many people are all these blue squares. And these places make $75,000 a year, $93,000 a year, or more on average. So these are places with a lot of money, a lot of wealth, and therefore also a lot of political power. So if the city of Detroit suggested that maybe we should put this trash incinerator outside of these low-income neighborhoods, far away from people, all these people in the blue squares could have protested that move and said, "Not in my backyard. You put that really dirty power plant somewhere else." And so that's kind of how this trash incinerator was placed right in the middle of Detroit. Just spewing a ton of air pollution right in the middle of the city. And so this is an example of an environmental injustice. Now, although maybe the people living in the city of Detroit didn't have the time, the energy, the resources to protest this move, that doesn't mean they're powerless. That does not mean they're powerless, because actually, although maybe they couldn't protest the original placement of the power plant, they definitely protested once it was there. They protested a lot, and they protested for a very long time. So in 2019, Detroit announced that that incinerator is going to be permanently shut down. And that's because, partly because people in the community had fought against this power plant for so long, and they fought so hard that eventually Detroit was like, whoa, like, okay, that's enough of this power plant. We shouldn't have put it here. That didn't really make sense. So that's awesome. And that's something that you find with a lot of environmental problems. I mean, a lot of environmental injustices. Nobody wants to live in a dirty environment. So, you know, people are going to fight against these things that are affecting their health or their environment. And so that was an example of an environmental injustice. That was an example of not in my backyard. But there's this question: why does environmental justice matter? So last class we talked about sustainability, and we talked about how sustainability, if an environmental solution is sustainable, it means that it's going to be good for the environment, the economy, and for society. It's going to be good today. It's going to be good in the future as well. And so if we think about environmental justice, that really, really helps us think about whether a solution is sustainable for society. So it can help us determine whether the social factor of an environmental solution is sustainable. And of course, it can also just help us create better environmental solutions because we're taking care of people. All right, so in class, we looked at a few different examples of environmental justice. The first one was coal mining in West Virginia. The second one, well, each of these examples has a story. So I'm going to read the story, and then you're going to answer the questions below. And I'm going to help you for the first two. The last one's on your own. So the story for the first one is West Virginia relies heavily on coal mining. In rural areas of the Appalachian Mountains, where people often live in poverty, coal mining provides roughly 20,000 jobs to miners, driving much of West Virginia's economy. However, the coal mining drives a bunch of environmental problems too. For example, mining destroys the land, and mining dust and chemicals pollute rivers. This pollution affects people's health because people living near coal mines have higher rates of asthma, lung diseases, and cancer. Children and elderly people are particularly affected. Because coal mining is so important to the state's economy, the majority of people oppose ending coal mining. So here's a picture of coal mining in West Virginia. You can see it's strip mining, which is where they take off the top few layers of the land. And then here is some water pollution. So this is just full of coal mining chemicals and dust. Super, super gross, probably really bad for the environment. So number one says, what is the environmental problem? The environmental problem here is that coal mining pollutes the land and the water. Number two, who is affected by the environmental problem? So the who are people who live close to the coal mine. So they're going to be the most people affected by this environmental problem. Number three, how are they affected? So does the environmental problem affect their health, safety, jobs? It affects their health. It affects their health because all the pollution is giving them chronic asthma or lung diseases or cancer. And number four, how could we design an environmentally just solution to this environmental problem? So how could we design a solution that is good for environmental justice? It's good according to environmental justice. So these people, the people affected by the environmental problem, are affected based on their location. And also because they're low income. So they need to have jobs. So whatever our solution is, we have to make sure that we're taking care of people's health and making sure that they still have jobs. So an environmentally just solution to this problem would be that would be we could limit coal mining. So we could reduce the amount of coal mining or eliminate it, because then we won't pollute as much or at all. But we also need to give them jobs, so we could try to hire them to build green energy instead in the area. West Virginia is very mountainous. Mountains are usually pretty good for wind energy. So we could have them build wind turbines. All right, number 2 is about climate change. So island countries in the world's oceans are tackling a massive problem, climate change. As the Earth warms and ocean ice melts, the sea level increases. Very soon, some island nations could be totally swallowed up by the ocean. Although these island nations are tiny and barely contributed to climate change, they are the first nations to see its devastating effects. Meanwhile, many large countries continue to produce millions of tons of CO2, making climate change even worse. Currently, island nations are sending representatives to larger countries, demanding that the world reduce and reverse climate change before the island nations are totally destroyed. So here's the island country of Tuvalu. You can see it's a pretty thin island, and the rising sea levels are threatening to just totally overtake the island. Totally overtake the land. So this one you're going to answer by yourself. Number 1 says, what is the environmental problem? Number 2 says, who is affected by the environmental problem? Number 3 says, how are they affected? Does the environmental problem affect their health, safety, jobs? Number 4, what are the island nations doing to solve this problem? And number 5, how could we design an environmentally just solution to this environmental problem? So write your answers there. And the third one, the third case study, the third example is about Rubbertown. So Rubbertown is a neighborhood in Louisville's West End, a historically black neighborhood. In Louisville's West End, a historically black neighborhood. It is home to 11 large chemical plants and accounts for 42% of Jefferson County's air pollution. 42% of their air pollution. That number blows my mind. People living in Rubbertown have higher levels of water and air pollution than other parts of Louisville. They also experience higher levels of heart and lung diseases and cancer, likely due to the amount of air pollution. Rubbertown citizens have a long history of coming together, and in 2003 created an organization, REACT, that is trying to clean up Rubbertown. So here's a map showing you where Rubbertown is. It's kind of over here. It is west of Shively, and I think it's like a 10-minute drive from Olmsted North. So number 1, what is the environmental problem? Number 2, who is affected by the environmental problem? Number 3, how are they affected? Does the environmental problem affect their health, safety, jobs? Number 4, what are Rubbertown residents doing to solve this problem? And number 5, how could we design an environmentally just solution to this environmental problem? Right, when you're done, go ahead and submit it. And then the last thing that you have to do for today is your exit slip. So if you go into Google Classroom, you'll see Lesson 21 exit slip. It's under week 13. The question is, in your own words, how would you describe environmental justice to a friend? Use at least one specific example. There are 2 parts to this exit slip. First, explaining what environmental justice is. Second, using at least one specific example. And that was all for today. Thanks for listening, and I will see you in class next time. All right, bye.